Hi everybody, I'm Butch Stearns. Welcome into this engaging discussion. We hope it turns into an engaging discussion for you, enterprise level business people, the enterprise level CEO in particular. If you're in IT security, if you are a CIO, we want to talk to you. We want to offer some solutions, some discussion about modern security and mobile SOA networks, traffic information in and out of corporate boundary. Now, I am clearly not the expert in this subject matter, but thankfully I do have two co-hosts who are. Randy Hefner next to me is an analyst with Forrester, and next to him is Jason Macy from Forum Systems. Randy, let's start with you first. Talk about what you do with Forrester. Talk about why you're passionate about this subject matter.
So I research and write about application architecture broadly, and what that means is how do you put together a mess of technology to run your business with applications you buy, applications you build, infrastructure components that you buy and use to control and secure the environment. How do you put all those pieces together? Well, I've been thinking about doing this stuff for about 30 years, about 12 years here as an industry analyst, looking at vendors like Forum Systems and others to say, what are they doing that's good? What are the trends in the industry, and how can you make a better business out of it?
So Jason, welcome in.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, talk about your role within Forum Systems and talk about what you're passionate about.
I'm the Chief Technical Officer with Forum Systems. I've been with the company since inception a little over 10 years ago. Basically, you know, our focus really is and has been for 10 years in the evolution of this industry, the evolution of business transactions, how businesses do and communicate with external parties, and how basically to centralize and focus technology to address the many complexities that therein that really are required at the business level to secure those transactions, to provide a lot of the identity, access control, governance, and security characteristics of those transaction flows.
So what Randy and Jason have just so greatly set up, securing business transactions in the mobile cloud computing era, talking about enabling enterprises to talk to each other in an automated, well-controlled environment, traffic information in and out of corporate boundary. We're going to discuss what's going on in the industry. We're going to talk about ways that you can accelerate your business, ways you can grow your business, and then hopefully we'll all learn something in the end that'll be educational, informational, and can help us do business in a different and better way. So let's talk about what's going on in the industry. Let's talk about integration. Randy, let me start with you. When it comes to integration in this day and age, in 2012, what's changed and how have enterprise level businesses, how are they currently employing a business view on integration now compared to what's changed?
Yeah, I think you know, if you contrast with integration traditionally, the switch is from internal to external. It's from focused on efficiency and effectiveness of running a business to opening new business opportunities. It's about a switch from a tightly controlled environment to an open environment that's available and ready for any type of business innovation. So if you think about it just from a standpoint of my website, integration has been about, let me make sure that I can get data from any of my 100 or more enterprise applications to my website for my customers to use and see. Now what I'm doing is saying, well, I don't want to control how people do business and how my customers access me because they can only go to my website. Let me open up the interfaces into my business transactions so that we can create lots of new business opportunities because my customers, my partners are going to think of new ways to do business that I hadn't thought of. So I'm opening up interfaces at a much lower level, broader access into my applications, and most critically from a security standpoint, programmable access into my environment and into my business. And if people are programming to my business, I better be concerned about that. But that's what's necessary if we're going to open up the kind of business opportunities that we're starting to see these days.
So Jason, I'm sitting here, again, as the CIO in an enterprise level business, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I understand. You know, these words, open, innovative, well, I need to address this, but guess what? I'm scared, okay? There's security, there's all this and that. I mean, no matter what industry I'm in, I'm facing these same challenges, yet I need to meet these opportunities, don't I?
You do, and in each industry and in companies therein have their own challenges with the types of data and integration points that they have, you know, e-commerce, telecommunications, government sector, you know, transportation, you know, all of the different verticals really across the board, healthcare, all have different requirements in terms of how they expose their data, the trading partners, the nature of the data, the sensitivity of the data. So indeed, there are considerations and concerns that all of the different really businesses across all the vertical sectors have to consider, because in the modern era, as Randy said, most of the integration points are externalized. It's not about tightly coupled integration points. It's broader in spectrum. There's broader technology diversification, and so there's a much more of a sense of a necessity to have broadened ability to be more flexible, either from the commercial need to stay in business and be competitive, or simply because that's the world we live in today. The data is diversified and in different locations, and to consolidate and bring all of that together with the considerations of access control, privacy, security are absolutely a part of that, a significant part of that equation.
Well, there's certainly plenty of headlines to make you worried as the CEO with,
Right.
You know, credit cards being taken from one website, or, you know, increasing concerns about cyber terrorism and attacks. Well, you don't want to be part of that. You don't want to be one of those headlines. And a lot of that has, you don't really have the choice not to integrate. That's needed for business efficiency and new business opportunities, but you've got to find a way to do it securely, at scale, and in a way that's flexible and doesn't hold your business back from change, but enables change.
So I always like to frame the questions under challenges and opportunities. When it comes to technology, you have a good dose of both of that with all of it, whether it's a piece of equipment or whatever. And as you all know too well, there's two words out there that are across your desk every single day: cloud and mobile. So let's bring up those two words and talk about that. So Randy, what happens with integration when, for an enterprise level business, we bring the private cloud and the public cloud together? What's one of the first things that happens for
well, you know, internally, if you're doing a private cloud thing, then it doesn't change quite so much, except that security pieces that you're running need to be able to run in the sort of virtualized environment that is a private cloud. But when you start talking about public cloud and public cloud platforms and public cloud servers and software as a service applications, what that does is just expands the number of different places that your business is running, different places that you have to secure, that you don't have control over so much of those server environments. So you've got more points to integrate, less control over what you integrate, and the need to have it have, you know, consistent policy and security across that, even when one transaction may actually happen to touch 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different environments across one software as a service application, and maybe you've got something running in an Amazon you know, cloud environment. So it just increases the complexity, but, you know, security requirements still stay just as stringent.
And I would absolutely. So, as Randy said, it extends effectively the boundary, really, of what, you know, traditionally would be considered the corporate boundary. Can extend if you're implementing public cloud services. There certainly is an implication there of now extending and broadening what you know, entry points into your data layer and your services layer that you need to consider. Mobile obviously has opened up an entire new spectrum of integration points, a wide diversity of necessity to expose existing services and new services in ways that can be consumed by, you know, what would, you know, normally be called cloud. We really sort of also frame in virtualization technology, which obviously cloud is one derivative therein, but effectively mobile being the sort of portable aspect, and then in virtualization also to a large degree are abstraction and more diversified set of technologies that really blur the corporate boundary line. And as Randy said, still doesn't change the necessity of a business and IT security professionals, enterprise architects and CIOs to consider architecting their solutions in such a way to facilitate for the necessity of security and identity.
Well, I mean, mobile, if you tie mobile back to some of the innovation conversation as well, aside from just opening up that many more different endpoints that you need to be considered about and considering in your security architecture, it also opens up that, basically mobile is about speed and it's about convenience. And fundamentally, it's about your customers and giving your customers speed and convenience. And there's lots of creative people out there that can figure out some way to bring value to your customers by combining your capabilities with somebody else's capabilities, and they'll deliver that on a mobile device. Whether you're a theater and somebody's scheduling and integrating somehow with somebody's favorite movie list, or whether it's something of a more serious and traditional core enterprise business scenario. So again, you need openness. Mobile adds to the complexity, but it adds to the need to be open so that your customers will be engaging with you more and engaging with you better, and that partners and maybe partners you didn't even choose will be opening up business opportunities for you.
Absolutely, and just one thing to add
Sure.
to that is that the mobile really does expand then the applicability of what services a company maybe used to provide on traditional channels now to a whole new host of opportunities. Application mobile devices really do expand now the ability for a company's value and what they currently provide to be once extended there to an entirely new potential community of consumers.
Oh, and a quick thing. I'm talking to some of the some digital agencies, and what they're saying is they're finding that there's nothing that won't be done mobile, in a mobile way. Whatever it is your website's doing, you ought to assume that all of that's going to be mobile at some point.
You're watching a discussion here that's sponsored by Forum Systems. My name is Butch Stearns. This is Randy Hefner. He's an analyst from Forrester. Jason Macy is the CTO of Forum Systems. So let's get into the implications of or on integration of all of this. We've just painted a picture that you all know out there, again, as enterprise level business people, as CIOs, that there's the need and the challenge to be out there where my customers are mobile wise. The cloud. You have to be part of all of that. We also know that while the traditional focus was internal, now the corporate walls, the boundaries are collapsing. You need to be connecting between silos. I mean, we understand all of this. So what are the implications of all of this on integration when it comes to diversification of integration? Jason, let me start with you. What are the implications on this on integration?
Well, the primary implication is that you have to balance really the necessity of privacy considerations, integrity considerations, access control, again, the sensitivity of data in various of the environments and flows. So a lot of the considerations really fall on two paths. One is you need to expose your business in order to be successful to the integration patterns, and balance that with a strategic approach to ensure that that data is inspected, is analyzed, is understood, is controlled, and is consumed by the appropriate consumers. The right data goes to the right people. So the integrity, privacy, access control, identity provisions, governance flow, what the actual systems that you're standing up can sustain. If you're standing up a new service and the next day you've got 1,000 new consumers, are you ready for that? And those types of things, integration-wise, sound great, but without preparing for some of these other implications, you need to couple those together when planning on exposing your services to other consumers.
So what types of systems do trading partners want to interact with? Take me into that discussion that you might have. Don't I just need a traditional firewall to do this?
Interesting question. I mean, basically, I think trading partners and companies would love to choose. It's a lot easier if you could choose which particular technology or which particular system that you can integrate with. The reality is you often can't choose, and you don't want to choose because then you more tightly couple the integration and you narrow the scope of who can consume those services. So that the necessity really to be flexible and adaptable are really some of the drivers behind why Forum Sentry as a technology is integral in the solution, to abstract and provide the ability to expose services on a broad diversity of different protocol formats, message formats, and abstract that from the service and data layer of a company so that it can expand the horizons of consumers without having to be really mired internally on all of the development work that goes into coupling those systems with a different type of consumers. Abstracting that out at the Sentry Gateway layer is really the approach that gives the most flexibility by allowing companies really to focus on their core services and data, but really provide the ability at the gateway to then expose those to the broadest set of consumers.
Or just not to mention that a firewall as a network appliance doesn't really understand what's going on at the application layer. It doesn't understand the content and what kind of data is passing, and when that data needs to be private, when that data needs to be connected and integrated with some policy decision. And so the analogy is like receiving a letter. A firewall knows, as a network thing, knows how to get the letter to you. It doesn't know what's inside the letter. But at the application layer, at the security layer, at an open, innovative business layer, you need to know what's inside the envelope.
Well, it seems to me, and I want you to comment on this, Randy, what you just said to me was interesting just a little bit ago. You said you need to expose your business to be successful. I think every enterprise level business understands that, but again, there's fear that comes with that right away. Just the word expose lends to fear. But I think you just gave the answer. You need a system that needs to think for you, that you don't have to have it's staffed and humans on there to be able to do that.
Device that you can tell it, the infrastructure, tell it, here's what privacy means in our environment. This class of users can get to this. This individual, this is health information, this individual can only get to their own data, and if we tried to pass back somebody else's data, stop it. And to be able to provide those business decisions in a way that the infrastructure, by doing deep content inspection, by seeing inside the envelope, can know what's going back and forth and make decisions for you as to what people are allowed to do.
And to be specific about your question and comment about firewalls and traditional network infrastructure, the data that we're talking about in the modern era of transactions in and out of the corporate boundary amongst all these different systems is comprised fundamentally of data that has application context. In other words, basically a REST, transactions, SOAP, XML, JSON are message formats that each of the systems consuming and generating the format understand. It's important and essential that the network component also understands that. Deep content inspection, as Randy mentioned, means the ability for this technology component to understand how to parse, how to process inline SOAP, XML, REST, JSON patterns in order to understand them and know specifically where they're going, who should see them, whether the privacy is intact, the routing decisions, where the content needs to go. Traditional infrastructure doesn't do any of that. That basically passes through arbitrarily on known ports. IDS systems only look at the packet layer. This is a deep content inspection pattern that is necessary for these types of traffic patterns, and that's why this type of technology is essential for that.
Well, let me give you one of my dumbed down examples. I mean, in this country, people in the South speak completely differently than the people in California do out west. But if you need to do business with all of them, and you added a device that has to decipher that, while they all may be speaking English, they got completely different dialects that they're
Absolutely.
doing.
And that translates to different security protocols, different ways of doing security, whether it's a SAML or Kerberos or WS security or it's any number of different protocols that one may care about and another may not. I mean, one of the integrations, one of the implications when you're open to partners actually varies by how powerful a partner you are in the ecosystem. If you're a major, powerful central player, you can just say, "Here's how we're going to do business,"
right,
and you can love it or leave it. But if many more organizations are on the other side of that equation, where and they want to do business with a bunch of big players, they have to adapt doing the same business transactions to many different ways of sending those messages,
I think that's
formats,
a great point. Playing off of my dumb analogy again is that while you need to understand what they're saying, they need to understand, and you may be the one that's putting out, well, you're going to have to speak this language.
And adaptability is really has to be on a very fast scale. I mean, adaptable doesn't mean go back to your development service team and try to rebuild something. It really means exposing that same information in different ways for different consumers, because as Randy said, absolutely, different types of technologies, different maturity curves, different trading partners all have different integration capabilities. So a company can't necessarily demand that everybody fall in line, but rather has to be able to be flexible. And the gateway layer technology provides that abstraction and flexibility.
Jason Macy, the CTO of Forum Systems. Randy Hefner alongside me. He's an analyst with Forrester. We're talking about secure business transactions. We're talking to you about traffic information in and out of corporate boundary. I want to talk about accountability and privacy, but for the sake of this discussion, let's focus this on highly regulated industries that are compliant. Let's talk about healthcare and finance in particular, maybe. There are many others, government, transportation, military, the airline industry. But let's focus on highly compliant industries. When it comes to accountability and privacy, talk us through accountability a little bit first. What's important when it comes to accountability?
Well, accountability is to be able to say who did what and who accessed what and who initiated what transaction. And that can extend to accountability in a court of law. And so if you have these transactions that you're exposing or information requests, and there comes a question about was that information properly accessed or properly disclosed, you need to be able to have audit trails that are based on strong deployment scenarios in knowing where messages were flowing, who did what at what time, and that's where, again, having the central element of a gateway component gives you a controlled access point that can provide accountability.
Let me bring up a simple example. Let's go to the healthcare industry, which patient records are always so sacred. So now I have my record. My doctor wrote up the notes. There are dozens of people today that are going to access those records that may or may not treat me, that may be insurance related, that may be whatever. And again, as you guys have mentioned several times in this show so far, that data is going to be touched. There's a lot of touch points along the way. It may be altered. Hopefully not altered with what they prescribe to me or whatever, but right? So that's a good example.
That's exactly, and you mentioned healthcare industry where privacy considerations, HIPAA, PCI compliance, and data in transit as well as at rest.
Not to mention security.
Security.
Those are my records.
Absolutely. Is it secure? Can anybody see it? So the technology components that comprise, digital signatures, encryption, decryption, verification, all of that folds into this. But accountability is, if you have a credit card transaction, are you going to be able to go back and rectify, which particular transaction occurred? If you've got to go back and in time and find out some of this information flow. If you've got a workflow management system, say a transportation industry ordered a part for a car. That's workflow that needs to be tracked. So accountability from a data flow is very important. And as Randy said, the centralization of that gives you that accountability because that's the flow where the information goes. If you don't have that, then it's completely decoupled. It's on the back end systems that something else has to aggregate. By having this abstraction layer, secure mediation layer, it gives you that accountability because that's where the traffic flow is directed through.
And consistent integration to other pieces of the security infrastructure as well, whether it's compliance reporting software or whatever that might do analysis of well, it was fine for Dr. Jones to access my record, but it turns out that Dr. Jones also accessed 5,000 other people's records. Well, wait a minute, he's not serving 5,000 patients. What's going on? How do you get that kind of information? It's by watching, recording, integrating with a broader ecosystem around it so that you can protect privacy, but also have accountability.
The distinction between privacy and security. So there's different needs with both of these. What if I asked you that question, either one of you, what is the distinction between privacy and security?
Well, we really consider identity, where privacy is a part of, and security in terms of abstraction of data, who can read it, is pretty tightly coupled. So privacy can be who can get to what. Privacy can also be who can see what of what they
Access.
got. Right? Access and information. I can maybe see this part but not that part. Security has, a slightly broader connotation because it could be the threat aspect of security, making sure, you're not getting access to certain things that you're not supposed to, making sure data is not coming out of the corporate boundary, not getting hacked, right? So you got threat management, you've got your transaction privacy for data in motion and data at rest, so data level encryption and protocol encryption. You've got your data integrity, which is your digital signature verification to ensure that content hasn't been manipulated or modified in transit. So privacy is an important part of that, but it is also in the broader theater of really security that is more comprehensive in threat, trust, and privacy.
I asked the question because, again, I'm thinking about the device and how it needs to be intelligent.
Yeah.
So it needs to have a level of interpretation. A social security number, for example, you may want only certain people to be able to see the social security number, but the device may need to access all the social security numbers and put them in a certain category.
So to bring it home to the technology in terms of the Sentry Gateway, as that data flows through, there's policy rules in place that dictate, who can see what kind of privacy considerations, what kind of security considerations, what kind of identity and access control, what kind of governance restrictions, what kind of content translation may have to occur depending on who the consumer is, depending on where the actual back-end service provider is. And that's all part of the technology stack to enable that to be reactive, real-time decision making, so that depending on the consumer, if it's an internal consumer or an external consumer, depending on the security levels of where you're coming from, who you are, depending on the nature of the data, are all rules that the gateway can enforce inline as traffic flows through to enact and put on or require for inbound that the information is secured, it has the privacy aspects. Otherwise, it won't allow those traffic patterns. And that's the fundamental aspect, is that this can be all abstracted out at the security gateway layer to accomplish this. And because it may differ depending on who you are, where you're going, what kind of business you are, what kind of data it is. So one security pattern, time of day, one identity pattern, it doesn't apply to all. It's rules-based and it's consumer and data-based.
So let me go back to Gateway. I'm glad you led us there. Randy, let me ask you the question. So what a gateway used to be and what a gateway is today, are they two different things now, or is it just a modification of?
There actually are some different ways in which the terminology is used, and usually there's a modifier on the front end. We had mainframe integration gateways earlier that in an earlier era, and here we're specifically talking about secure service integration and that type of gateway. And so it's a bounds of I like the phrase "dog at the door" that to say that's what we're trying to get is there's a doorway. Number one, we're trying to limit it to where there's a known doorway, and the gateway is the dog at that door for any of my these external integration points that we're talking about for my company.
A Black Lab or a Doberman? Because it's completely different.
Rottweiler.
If he's a Rottweiler, that's now we're talking secure.
Yeah, there you go.
So I think this leads us into some of the meat of this. And again, I'm an enterprise level CIO, and I need to accelerate my business. I need to find ways to answer all these questions that we brought up, to address all these opportunities that are out there. And by the way, they may be coming fast and furious that I'm not even thinking about. Okay, so let's go back to the gateway, and for my purposes, in my mind, give me the airport security analysis. Is the gateway airport security? When I walk in, is that what it is?
Well, if you want to compare it to that, I would compare it in the following way. In the airport industry, you've got your TSA, which basically is your fundamental vetting point for any traveler on any airline, regardless of where they're going, right?
Yep.
There's a central vetting point to ensure various characteristics of identity and security are met in order to get into the airline system. A gateway can be thought of as in very similar ways, in that it's a conduit in and out of the service and data layers that look at and inspect centrally across all of the different types of travelers, which would be in the airline industry, type of message formats, type of data flows, but in a centralized way. So that you have, basically the ability, rather than doing it on an individual, carrier basis, you can still do that on the backside, but have a more consistent, centralized way of enforcing those data streams is how I would probably best correlate it to that analogy.
Yeah, when there are terrorists out there, I'd much rather have a central agency, say what we may say about the TSA, I'd rather have that central agency controlling that rather than having each airline saying, well, here's how we'll do security and here's how we'll do security. I mean, maybe you trust the major airlines, maybe not. But what about the mom and pop airlines and the local place?
But again, from an enterprise level business, I think this is a good analogy because you may want checkpoints along the way for data at different levels, whether it's through your B2B relationships, whether it's before it gets to the end user. I mean, to your point, you want TSA there to check thoroughly for terrorists, but as Delta Airlines or as US Air, I may want my own checkpoints for whatever reason.
And there may be some federated security models where a gateway sends downstream some security information that a corporate application might then use for its own purposes of security. Or I might, for that matter, take a gateway at the central TSA model and deploy another copy of the gateway in front of an application with a different set of policies that are specific to that application.
Yeah, and one interesting point too to mention there is, Randy said, one of the very common use cases of gateway technology is to put some artifact, like if TSA, they're going to write something on your card saying they vetted you. Similarly, a gateway will often do the security identity decision points and then maybe embed some artifact of information that did occur upstream, like maybe some identity credential characteristics, some security characteristics about that user, so that when that information does go to the backend infrastructure, there is some remnant of what vetting occurred upstream at the gateway that can be then used for further decisioning, further characteristics of additional perhaps security or vetting that needs to be done.
And that might be that downstream vetting might be done by a copy of the gateway, or it might be done by other service-oriented tools like an enterprise service bus, an ESB, that might also check for that sort of data, because you got to. An ESB serves a whole different integration kind of function of deeper data mapping and other sorts of things, but doesn't provide the depth of security that a gateway does. And so you may have that separation of duties between different points in the architecture. But again, you come back to that central dog at the door, your central Rottweiler that's protecting things as they come in the door.
Yeah, if it's a black lab, I'm just giving them a bone, and then I'm going taking all the jewelry out of there.
Yeah.
So Jason, let me ask you about various deployment form factors when it comes to secure business transactions, when it comes to gateways and all of this. Talk about the various deployment form factors in the industry.
Sure. I mean, it comes back to a large degree to some of the topics earlier. Virtualization technology sort of lends itself to the necessity of having software and hardware form factors for this type of gateway technology to be adaptable in cloud and virtualized environments. You can't have just metal. Just metal doesn't do it in the modern era of hybrid approaches to infrastructure, traditional infrastructure, and virtualized infrastructure. With Sentry, we take that, we have a hardware and software form factor. The necessity there is because there are enforcement points where the core aspects of high enterprise scalable security and cryptographic acceleration, I know which we'll get into in a little bit, the necessity for the platform itself to have a hardening of it itself so that the actual gateway itself can't be compromised. There's a pedigree that needs to be met on the integrity of the hardware and the architecture of the gateway solution itself as the starting point. And then that being able to be abstracted in a hardware form factor and a software form factor. And when I say software, I mean virtual container, a Solaris, a Linux, a Windows. The variants of technology operating systems that customers run in these various environments, that the gateway technology can seamlessly run within those frameworks, but also on a hardened rendition where you've got your hardened key security, your hardened cryptographic acceleration qualities.
So Randy, talk about cryptography. Why is it so important in this process?
Yeah, well, here's an interesting data point. I think we used to talk about the bit level strength when you talk about cryptography is a measure of how strong, how difficult it is to actually crack the code and look at the data that's been scrambled, and the acceptable bit levels keep going up. It was 128, 256, 1024, 2048. Keep needing larger and larger keys. The reason is because it is critical to be able to prevent anyone from seeing. Back to our mail analogy is if I'm sending an envelope through the mail, it's going through who knows what sort of public environment. Some of my message requests or my transactions going across the broad internet. Well, I don't want just anybody to be able to peek at that. But what makes it interesting is that in past forms of and eras of integration, it was enough to maybe just encrypt the network connection with SSL, like what usually you'd have on a transactional website. But privacy regulations and financial risk and other factors make organizations find more and more need to encrypt at individual field levels, even if the whole message is encrypted, and that drives up the load on servers, because cryptography, particularly when you go up in the size of the cryptography key, takes lots and lots of CPU in order to be able to create. But it's a matter of protecting the data so that you're actually sure about your the privacy and security.
Quick comment on the other end of the spectrum. You mentioned how the levels of it are going up and the code needs to go up. What if in this open environment that you don't want cryptography? Well, you don't want it to be encrypted.
I mean, if I'm a weather website or something, and I've got an open API.
Public information.
Yeah, it's public information. Who cares? You don't need cryptography. But what gets very interesting is sometimes it might be well-known information, but it's a paid service that someone's accessed, or it's between me and a partner. Still nobody's business, even if it's public information. So cryptography becomes important. Also very interesting is a shift with increasing security threats is a move toward a zero trust environment where even inside the company, I don't trust the network connection. Somebody might be listening internally, or some cyber terrorist may have broken through and installed some piece of monitoring software inside my environment. Lots of things could happen, so that we're driving cryptographic requirements deep inside the organization as well.
Jason, you mentioned cryptographic acceleration. Talk about that.
Well, it's essential. As Randy said, cryptography permeates just about every aspect of business transactions, whether it be from an SSL tunnel protection for data in motion to cryptography on the data pattern itself for data at rest. Identity, token integrity, all are deal with a public-private key infrastructure. And the necessity is, the fact of the matter is, Randy said, key sizes are increasing. The baseline of key sizes is raised from, maybe 2-3 years ago was 1024, now standardized on 2048-bit keys. And the reality is cryptographic operations crush CPUs. The reality is it's by intent. The nature of raising key sizes is to decrease the exposure of the ability to crack them. So it is heavily burdensome on CPUs specifically. What the Sentry technology had done really since inception is built a cryptographic acceleration layer that basically uses an ASIC cryptographic accelerator that does all keying operations directly on a dedicated chip. And the necessity of that is there's no CPU hit. It's completely linear scalable regardless of key size, and gives you that necessity in the enterprise class transaction speeds to be able to do cryptography at the speeds where you're not impacting your business transactions, because the value of integration still needs to be there from a speed perspective and not be impacted by cryptography. And that's why cryptographic acceleration is absolutely essential.
we've talked about what's gone on with the industry. We've talked about the need for a gateway and all that goes along with that. Let's talk about what quite honestly, I think a lot of CIOs don't find the time to do, is think about growing your business and on your business. And while that's primarily your CEO's job, if you can offer solutions from that end, you sort of create some value for yourself on a different level. So when we talk about working on your business and growing your business and using a gateway and addressing all these challenges and opportunities, what are the challenges?
To start with, one of the key scenarios with trading partners is to have certificates on both sides of the equation. So I can verify that my partner is who the partner says they are, and the partner can verify that my server is who I say that I am. Well, the more trading partners you have, the more you grow your business, the more difficulty you have managing the keys and the certificates associated with them. A certificate should expire every once in a while so that you know that we're current. How do you manage all the certificate renewals, and sometimes a certificate gets compromised and revoked? How do you manage an understanding that and recognizing when a certificate is revoked? That's part of it, but another part is just the expansion of identity. We mentioned how identity, I might be trusting a Facebook or others. It's just a matter of how do I understand and trust the relationships, because at the heart of that federated identity scenarios is some type of cryptography, so that I know who the identity provider is that I'm actually trusting. When it says that it's Randy Hefner with the request, how do I actually know?
And it's at the tip of the iceberg for cryptography, because the complexity in cryptography is very extensive in terms of the key types, key variants, algorithms, and the standards are so diverse that each vendor implements only specific threads of them, so interop becomes a concern. Key management, as Randy said, is a huge issue. If you're trying to do all this in your back-end infrastructure and you've got 300 services, every one of them managing keys and key life cycles and trying to coordinate those keys, and as Randy said, you multiply that by then as many trading partners. It's a nightmare just in the key management. But the reality is, you mentioned, why would a CIO care about growing a business? You don't want to think about cryptography. That's not what you. Right. That's not your game. You don't want to be in the game of talking about key sizes, key management, and what crypto algorithms work in what systems. You don't want to do that. You want to invest in a technology platform that does it for you, so that it can abstract that logic from your back-end systems. You don't want your development tier and your application tier to deal with identity and key management in crypto, because by doing so, first of all, it burdens the efforts away from what you can focus on, the business value. It exposes a whole bunch of problems. And as you mentioned, you want to grow your business. You want the core focus of your team to be focused on building business services, building the value of the company. Let the gateway deal with the cryptography aspects. That's what it does best. It has all these standards built in. It knows how to do all these cryptographic formats. You don't want to have to know. You just want to know what cryptography you need. You don't want to have to know what cryptography does, how it does it. It's just, let the technology component do that for you.
And multiply all that by the challenge you mentioned earlier, which is, if I'm a small player in my ecosystem, I'm answering to all the different security policy profiles and cryptography profiles of all the big players that I need to connect with for the same service, for the same transactions. Exactly. I got to do them 20 different ways, 100 different ways.
I want to try to talk to CIOs and talk about scalability, and again, how you scale this, because the opportunities may come along and you're not sure when they come. But I want to go back to a point you guys brought up, and it's social media, which is interesting, because there's a gentleman named Greg Verdino, this is not my comment. He said one of the differences today in this modern world is that everybody in the audience now has an audience. And I'll add to that everybody in the audience also has their own network. So when you think about this, whether it's from a consumer level or a business level, I mean, we all hear within our own organizations, you need to blog, you need to send out content, you need to reach an audience in an engaging way, and we're all doing that. I mean, that's what our business is here at the Pulse Network. But when you look at that, there are those same challenges and opportunities at a level of security with data, exchanging information in between, and if you don't address it, you're missing opportunities because that's the way the world is today, right? Just a quick comment on that.
And I would say that comment highlights it perfectly, because the complexity of that environment and those interrelationships grows, exponentially. And if you try to do that type of security at the peer level, at the endpoint level, it's unruly after day one. You have to do it at the hubs of exactly those transaction patterns.
Build a good
You
foundation,
do it at the
start it the
foundation,
right
at the
way.
hubs,
Yeah.
not at the spokes.
Yeah, well, I want to take a whole different angle on when you bring that up. Is think of all the issues that we've talked about, and think about the difference on if you do them well or if you don't do them well as your organization enterprise. What happens is whether you do it well or whether you do it poorly gets spread around a whole lot faster
Right,
through
right.
that
Oh,
social
yeah.
media.
Damage control starts immediately in this day and age.
Damage control, or you brought it up in the context of scalability, opportunity control, the opposite,
right.
where
Opposite,
it's well, that was great, it takes off. Are you ready for it?
Right. So let's go there. Great segue there, Randy. Let's talk about, are you ready for success and scaling your business? I'm in healthcare or finance. I'm in government or military. I'm in the telco industry. I'm in transportation. Any of these, right? So all of a sudden these opportunities come about either by volume, by the number of people that, whoa, I had no idea they were going to sell that many. I got to be ready to handle that as a B2B relationship. Or by quality. Wow. It's not a volume of stuff, but what they're selling, everybody wants that. Either way, I got to be ready for this. So I guess the question is, when it comes to scalability, when it comes to dealing with openness and innovation, how are you ready for success? How can you be prepared for this, to pounce on those opportunities? Again, I think you said it, Jason. Start at the hub and don't be at the spokes. I mean, that was the social media example, but it's true. You better build the right foundation.
Build the right foundation. Build your architecture. Be intelligent about leveraging technology that can facilitate a lot of the heavy lifting for you. Don't try to reinvent the wheel, build everything at the back end, because it won't scale. It may be great on day one, but by day 2 or 3, as Randy said, when you really start getting successes, the pain points will be there, and it's a lot harder to then take a lot of that out of the system. The identity decisions, the access control, the latency hits back and forth, the centralized policy servers, the cryptography burdens that we talked about are all parts of the equation that will crush scalability and crush really the growth potential of exposing and being successful. So you have to consider that a mediation layer, a secure mediation layer from an architectural perspective is the foundation of being prepared for scale by the heavy lifting being performed by a dedicated technology component that is built to do that. And abstract that from the internals of what your business, your core values of the business are.
And I want to take what Jason was saying and say, let's encapsulate a lot of that in just saying, you got to have a good, strong, robust, secure foundation. But on top of that, when we're talking business opportunity and innovation, when we're talking about opening up your business, opening up programmability, to the broad base of transactions that you have, it comes down to basically 2 things, and that is how flexible is that solid infrastructure to be able to handle new requirements, new scenarios, new protocols, new ways of connecting, new requirements that a partner might put on you, new opportunities to address some crazy new protocol that somebody happens to have come up with that all of a sudden all the social media sites are adopting or whatever. So flexibility. But the other thing is tying back to the cloud discussion and such as lots of interesting value with cloud, lots of interesting conversations and perhaps some overhype to the cloud. But here's the one thing that cloud has right, and that is the ability to say, well, right now I'm doing 10 transactions an hour, and tomorrow, because something has happened big, I need to be doing 1,000,000 transactions an hour. You can't deploy that many servers that fast if your robust, flexible security infrastructure can't live in a virtualized environment in a well-behaved way and in a way that's flexible, then you're not ready for the broad open innovation that someone may bring to your business when you've opened it up.
So before we wrap up with some takeaways with all of this, when it comes to, I think, your two key points, flexibility and security, that does sort of sum up the need, what you have to do. You need to have an infrastructure where your intranet that you've built internally is going to be exposed to the internet on a daily basis, on a growing basis. Your infrastructure needs to be able to handle the load, and you need to be prepared for it from day one with what you're doing in a secure way, but in a flexible way. Did I say that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I feel pretty smart if I said that right in general sense.
But add scalable to that as well. Secure, flexible, scalable.
But if you're not doing it that way, it's going to fall apart. Right?
You may have a good idea, but your good idea runs out of steam. And I think another concept to enter into that, to emphasize some of the importance here, is that there's a term Forrester's been using here recently, digital disruption. And the notion is, it doesn't take a lot for somebody to radically change the landscape of a market and opportunity. It only takes a little bit of a couple of guys, or girls, that have a good idea, that connect, programmatically connect a couple of companies, connect a couple of ideas, and all of a sudden, you have a great new business opportunity on your hand, and you want to be ready to be part of those opportunities, because you may have the sort of thing that's just what somebody needs to put 3 or 4 pieces together and have a great new offering in the market.
All right, time for some takeaways. Time to recap our discussion. On the far left is Jason Macy. He is the CTO of Forum Systems. To my left is Randy Hefner, an analyst for Forrester. I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. In this discussion that we've had about traffic information in and out of corporate boundary, about modern security and mobile SOA networks, secure business transactions in today's mobile and cloud computing era. Some of the things I've learned in this, it's been very educational for me. Here's what I've learned, and I want some comments from you. I'll stop at each point. One, it is a different world now. It's a world where consumers, the end users of products and services and solutions, are demanding it in real time. They want it now, and if you don't give it to them now, they're going to go somewhere else to get it.
It's about opening your business to growth, opening your business to new ways of delivering information, so that customers can get what they want when they want, and combine your capabilities with some other company's capabilities to come up with something more powerful.
And when it comes to the CIO, the modern day CIO at the enterprise level, you need the right tools to be able to have this system in place, to all the things we talked about, to pounce on the opportunities, to have security at the base level of it all, to, as you said, start at the hub and then build it out through the spokes, because that's how it's going to expose. And again, Jason, you said you need to expose your business to be successful. So what are some of the key takeaways about the right tools to have to do it?
Because your competing initiatives are growing the business and growing the value and exposing and open opportunities, and coupling that with the necessity of protecting your business and protecting your company in terms of threat prevention, in terms of the security and access control aspects of it. So the balance there really needs to adhere to a framework, a security gateway framework that can do a lot of the heavy lifting aspects of security and identity, and decouple you from the business value of the integration. So you can really continue to focus on where that value is, exposing new services, exposing new entry points, exposing new opportunities, without having to be mired in the complexities of data security and identity, but also with the confidence that you've invested in a solution that protects your infrastructure, protects your data, because that is also an essential part. Integration isn't just open season for everybody. It has to have those tenets of security, identity, and governance in mind.
And again, the key points in scaling your business, again, to what you brought up, Randy, being able to pounce, being ready for success. Give me one key point for each of you to today's enterprise level CIO to be ready when that opportunity comes about?
You've got a many-to-many problem as a modern CIO. You got lots of business opportunity, and you've got lots of applications and transactions. The way to solve a many-to-many problem is put a broker in the middle, which is a gateway that can make sure that you're secure, flexible, and scalable to address those opportunities using all the power that you have of your data and applications.
Abstract and centralize. Security tenants of the gateway to have the confidence and assurance that that's the vetting point. That's the introduction of transaction paths that can be vetted at the perimeter, at the edge, hardened security, built from the ground up with security in mind, having the integration features to be adaptable to the business needs, but abstracting that out of the internal service layer out to the perimeter to do those decision points in real time with fast transactions and allow you to be more adaptable to expanding business needs.
So again, to put a wrap on this program, you are the modern day CIO. You're dealing at an enterprise level in business. You may be in healthcare or finance, government or military, telco, transportation. Either way, no matter what industry you're in, you have a lot of these same needs, you have a lot of these same challenges, but you also have a lot of these same opportunities. So to wrap things up with Randy Hefner from Forrester and Jason Macy, the CTO here of Forum Systems. Jason, talk to me and talk to the CIO. What am I thinking about? What do I need to be focused on with my gateway, with the solution from my clients?
The core consideration is a solution that is, as its baseline of security, is a secure architecture, a secure platform that can be deployed at the edge of your network, that can give you the confidence that there's no ability to have the system compromised, and then the technology on top of that to accomplish the business integration aspects in modern day world around security, identity, governance, and mediation. The more you can bring that out to the perimeter edge, the more flexible you'll be, but never compromising the security aspects, which is fundamental to the business.
And Randy, you're obviously passionate about that. That was displayed over this last hour, but you've seen it for more than 3 decades now, and it really is an exciting place where businesses are going, and the ways, the businesses that are going to be able to keep up and expand and grow are the ones that are going to be able to meet these challenges. And I think you put it best, being flexible, but being secure also.
Right, right. Yeah, and that's great. And it's important to turn the focus for a CIO. What you need to do is turn the focus from internal running your business to expanding and innovation in your business. How does your business go forward into new territory, and how are you a business executive, not a technology executive, to make that happen?
So go to forumsys.com, that's FORUMSYS.com, if you'd like more information about Forum Systems, about the Forum Century. And Randy, with Forrester, how do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, two good ways. Just Forrester.com, 2 R's in the middle of Forrester, and you can search for me on there. Or Twitter is at BizTech21. So either of those places.
So Jason, Randy, I am clearly still not an expert, but I feel much more educated on this subject. I'm ready to go out and get my own gateway now and put my black lab at the door and secure it all. Okay?
There you go.
Thanks,
Great.
gentlemen.
Thanks.
Great talking.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for being a part of this content. Thanks for being a part of this program. I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network.